Most wine grapes on Earth grow on American rootstock, and that's because Europe accidentally imported one of the worst disasters the wine industry has ever seen. In the late 1800s, the European wine industry literally started dying in the fields, and nobody knew why. Entire wine regions in Europe were collapsing. Vineyards were dying, families were ruined, and the price of wine exploded. And all of this was caused by a tiny insect called Phylloxera. And the craziest part is that around the world, the wine industry still lives with the consequences of it to this day. In the mid-1800s, European vineyards, especially in France, were thriving, but growers were dealing with issues like mildew, so they decided to import American grapevines to do some experimenting. Some were looking for disease resistance, and some were just enticed by the idea of exotic varietals. Also around that time, steamships made the passage from America to Europe much quicker. Now, while it was great that steamships could cross the Atlantic so quickly, it did cause a serious problem that nobody could have foreseen. Longer voyages often meant that insects and things that were brought on board died before ever reaching the other side of the world. But now that things were moving faster, bugs could survive the trip. And so, as a result, infected American vines made their way across the Atlantic to Europe, where they went directly into nurseries and vineyards. Phylloxera is an insect native to North America, and as a result, American grapevines had developed resistance to it. But European vines? Well, they had virtually none. And to make matters worse, Phylloxera feeds on the roots of a vine underneath the ground. The roots get damaged, they get infected, and then the root starts to rot, and eventually, the vine dies of starvation. And because most of the damage is happening underground, nobody could see what was happening before it was too late. Growers blamed weather, bad soil, fungal problems, and even divine punishment. It was the 1800s after all. And because they didn't know what was happening, by the 1870s and 1880s, the problem had exploded all across Europe. France was devastated first, followed by Spain, Italy, Portugal, Germany. Basically, every major wine region in Europe was affected in some way. Millions of vineyards were destroyed, and eventually, fake wine exploded into markets because there wasn't enough real wine left. And there was genuine fear that the European wine industry would collapse forever. Europe tried basically everything to solve it. They tried flooding vineyards, they tried whatever toxic chemicals they had at the time, they tried burning entire vineyards, and they even did weird stuff like burying toads under the ground. But nothing really worked. Eventually, somebody realized something pretty important. This wasn't happening in America, so they looked deeper into the problem. They found that Phylloxera did exist in America, but American vines could survive Phylloxera. So while some growers did start just growing American varietals, most people realized that the wine people wanted to drink were made from the European varietals. And so they figured out a way to combine them. By grafting European vines onto American roots, the problem was solved. This allowed growers to grow the European varietals that everybody all around the world wanted to drink, while using those American roots that were resistant to Phylloxera. And that's how vines are planted all over the world today. In the end, entire wine regions had to be rebuilt vine by vine. Some historic vineyards disappeared forever, and some indigenous varietals were pulled out and replaced with bigger names that would do better money-wise. And the world of wine never went back to what it was before. But there are a few places that escape disaster almost entirely. Whether it be because of isolation or soil content or another factor, some of these places still exist on their own rootstock today. So let's take a look at 4 bottles that come from regions like that. Regions that weren't devastated by Phylloxera to anywhere near the extent that the rest of Europe was. First, we'll look at Etna in Sicily. Volcanic soils around Mount Etna in Sicily made it hard for Phylloxera to spread, and this allowed some vineyards to survive throughout the entire ordeal on their native European roots. A great example of this is Terre Nere pre-Phylloxera Etna Rosso. This is literally wine that comes from a vineyard that was planted before Phylloxera ravaged Europe. It is a pricey bottle of wine, but it is delicious. Smoky and herbal with red fruit, nice acidity, and good volcanic energy to it. If you know, you know. And then there's Santorini in Greece, an island where Phylloxera never really took hold at all. Again, volcanic soils contributed to that. But isolation also played a major factor. Many of the vines growing in Santorini today are ungrafted. Estate Argyros is known for having a lot of very old vines on their properties, but their bottle, Atlantis, is a great entry to the style of wine that Santorini makes. Super bright, salty, and citrusy, it's a delicious bottle of white wine that tastes like the ocean breeze. In Spain, parts of Toro survived because Phylloxera struggles in sandy soils. This allowed some incredibly old Tempranillo vineyards to survive on their original roots. Vatan is a powerhouse bottle from Toro. This has huge dark fruit, spice, and structure. It's an incredibly dense and intense Spanish wine that comes from ancient, low-yield vines. And finally, there's Tramonti on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. The mountain isolation here helped preserve ancient vineyard sites from the Phylloxera crisis. Tenuta San Francesco Tramonti Bianco comes from that same historic vine culture. It is bright, citrusy, textured, and herbal, and completely different from the mass market white wines of Italy that many consumers are used to. Phylloxera didn't just damage wine, it reshaped the entire modern wine world. And these vineyard sites are tiny windows into what European wine looked like before the collapse. If you want to check out any of the bottles in this video, I'll link them down in the description. And if there's any wine topics you want covered, let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to share this video with a friend because wine is always better when you're sharing it with someone else. Anyway, that's going to be it for me this week. Adios.